Well, you can film. Trouble with putting them underneath here is it'll ruin the camera. It's a nice angle. Okay, I'm going to call that good for now. We can really just pull these tools out of here. And then I can explain what the hell we're up to under here. What we've done. What we've done so far. I think I'm even gonna do the pan, the trip pan. And I'll tell you why. Okay. So go to Tim Pandy's Instagram and check that video he did out. Well, you and Joe did, right? Yeah, kind of funny. Interesting, funny. So anyways, we're trying to make this baler so that it is the new hay whore of Hunterdon County. That's what we're going to call it. The hay whore of Hunterdon County.
Did we get that paint on it?
The hay whore of Hunterdon County. Yeah, we could put that on there. You know, we could definitely do that. So, all right. This baler is a 2003 model. I think I've said that already. And everybody's telling me, oh, that's a slow baler. It's a slow baler. It's a slow baler. It's not going to be able to do what the Krone does, which I agree 100% wholeheartedly. It is not going to do what the Krone baler does. But it's going to do what the 4910 Hesston was intended to do, and that is to make 4x4 bales. What I am doing is, or we are doing, is modifying it to the point where it will make a very good bale as quickly as possible with as little stress on the machine as possible. And I think we're going to be kind of successful at that for what we're doing. If you look in the throat here, that pan down there is all that pan is steel. And I decided that, well, with some help from the neighbor. He's like, oh yeah, I put poly in there, and that increased my flow like tenfold. Well, he only had like this 3/16 poly that he put in there, and it wore right out. But my dad had 1/2 inch thick plastic board, and that's really what I wanted to put in there. What I did here was I had 1/8 inch plastic that I had already, and I laminated it. So there's two pieces here. I left it free at the top. There's no pins or bolts or anything in the top, because let's face it, the hay just comes up to the top there, and then it gets stuffed into the bale chamber. Now, this is a concern of mine, and I think we're going to go ahead and add a piece of plastic over top of the trip floor. Can you pick up on that thing and trip that floor back up? Not that. You got to push on the little wheelie thing that the spring's attached to. There you go. Okay, so if you've never been inside of one of these things and you don't even know what they're about, this is a crankshaft, and these are called packer fingers. And what they do is they bring hay off of the pickup header into the pre-charge chamber, which is this area right here. We have taken all the bands out. They're laying on the floor over there. At least Joe and Tim took them out. I did not. It took about 10 minutes. And what happens is it fills up to the top. And why aren't the fingers in there? Oh, they're not in there because the stuffer's up. Okay, so I got the stuffer forks are all the way up and out of my way, so we have plenty of room to work in here. But what will happen is when the hay comes up, there's these holes up in here, and you probably can't see them in the video, but there's forks that come out of those holes, and they hold the slice of hay in this area until it's packed tight enough to actually put pressure on this floor pan. This floor pan does this. You hear it trip, and that will activate these stuffer forks here. Now go ahead and put the floor pan back up. That'll activate these stuffer forks to sweep the hay up into the plunger and compressing it and shoving it out the ass end of the baler. Now, by putting this plastic in here, I think I've done all right with that. But my problem is there's a lip here, and when this floor pan is down, it exposes that lip. And what I'm afraid is it's going to lift. Hay's going to get under there and lift that, and then I won't have, it's just going to destroy it. So I don't want that. I really don't want that. I don't want it to do that. Huh?
Is grind it down a bit, make an angle on the corner there.
Nope. I'm going to put a piece of plastic over the top of it that laps over top of this. Okay. And that will stop any of my problems that I know are going to happen here. Now this floor pan is narrower than the actual pre-charge chamber, so I do have another piece of poly that's this thickness that I can just put on top of this and overlap it here so that when it does trip down, it just lays on the top of that and nothing can get underneath there and tear it up. Because I could put 100 screws in there, 100 bolts in here, and it, you know, it's just still going to bulge, it's going to wear in different places. And this is where it'll wear, where it bulges. So if I actually just put that plastic in there, overlap that, life will be good. I'm thinking life will be good. What do you think, Joe? You think life will be good?
I think life will be good.
I think so. I like that half-inch poly idea, though. I really think that half-inch poly is going to be in there forever.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if I could put the half-inch poly board on there. You know, it'll overlap that. I could put half-inch poly board on this.
Put a lot more weight on it, though, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't matter because it's spring tension anyway. Yeah. We've actually lifted the hay off of this thing, creating a tighter area here for that hay to go through, but because it's plastic it'll be alright. But I'm afraid that it's going to cause a little issue. So I think we're just going to use the half-inch poly board and bolt that in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places on this thing here and have it extend over this maybe a half an inch or so. And hopefully that'll do what I want it to do. If I use the thinner stuff, it's going to wear out faster. But I don't know, let's figure it out later, or figure it out now pretty quick, I guess. You can't pop rivet it unless you have steel pop rivets, because the aluminum pop rivets, they just wear right off. There's so much going through this machine that it wears that off. But anyways, with that being said, I think we're about ready to go home, because it is, what time now? It's freaking late.
9 something.
Nah, it's time for bed. Anyways, Teresa's got food for you. If you want to eat, you can. If not, you can go home. Alright. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to choke to death here before I talk about this. Alright, so we just got this thing lined with plastic. This is the pre-charge chamber. The packer forks come across and fill the pre-charge chamber up, and when it's rusty like this, it sticks, so it really wouldn't run too smoothly until it got shined up. So I was going to paint it with graphite paint, but then I realized that these machines really were not designed to run wet hay. So I had here at the farm this in the shop here, this plastic here that's right here, and this is like, I think it's is it 1/8 inch?
Yeah.
I think it's 1/8 inch. It's 1/8 inch poly, and I didn't want to fasten it all the way up and down the centers because it really isn't necessary. Because when you fasten it, you can see there's just a tiny little bulge between, and that's where it's going to wear. So I fastened it at the front and in the sides to keep it from shifting. I probably didn't even need to fasten it that far up. I laminated it so that it would be twice as thick, so in the event that I do have a problem, there's another sheet behind it to keep it where it goes. So with the 3 bolts, or 2 bolts in the sides, and that's holding the back sheet because it wasn't quite long enough to go all the way to the top. So this to me seems like a better way to lay it in there. Now when it came to the front piece, my father, he had a piece of 1/2 inch thick poly board, which is like concrete. This stuff is tough. It's the same as this, only, you know, much thicker. 3/8 of an inch thicker. So we put the front piece in last night, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do this one. This is the floor, the pressure plate, so when this fills up, it trips. Watch. Ready? Listen. That trips and allows the stuffer that I have at the top here to come down and stroke the hay up into the bale chamber so that it can compress. Yeah, so what I wanted to do was take the thinner plastic and put it over top of the door and then overlap it over top of the bolt holes so that it would, you know, protect it from the hay coming across and catching here and actually peeling this plastic off. I don't want this plastic to have any pressure on it. So as the hay comes in, it's going to be pushing down on this anyway. But the one thing that we did kind of understand was that dirt is going to come, dirt, mud, and stuff, or whatever. If there's mud that I get in here, which happens from time to time, it could come and pack under here and then limit this door's ability to come down. So me and Grant put this one in. I decided that it would be better to just go ahead and put the 1/2 inch plate on top of this. It doesn't go all the way to the edge of the hay, of the bale chamber there. So I may have a little problem here, but I don't think so. I think it's good enough there that'll be all right. And even if it does tear it up, whatever. I'll put that. I still have enough of this 1/2 inch thick poly board that I can just lay this in, and it will be a bastard because of the bend in it. Now the front is bent. I don't know if you can see that through the camera. Yes, you can. So the front is bowed, and what I did was we bolted it on the back, on the sides in the back, and the front, the middle, and the front there, and in the middle on the sides, and then I drilled new holes down the center to hold it in place so that it doesn't have that bubbling issue in the front, because dirt packs under there, it's going to bulge it, and then of course the spikes or the packer forks are going to cut a hole in it. So anyway, I decided that I would just make a piece of poly to go over top of the door, and we use the 1/2 inch thick stuff, so when it does come down, it's still higher than what this other plastic is. So everything will be swept over the top. It can't grab it. I think I'm going to have to cut that off too, because I don't like that part. So it can't hit this plastic and peel it up. So I think we've got it lined pretty good. So me and Tim are going to go ahead and put all of the now packer fork bands in, or the pre-charge chamber stuffer fork bands in that go over the top of this, because the hay goes in between here. Now I was asked by a couple people whether I was going to put plastic on those bands too to make it. I don't think it's necessary. The pressure of the hay is actually forced downward, not upward, and I actually think the bottom sides of these things still have paint on them, and that'll tell you how little wear there is. So there's very little pressure on them. Right here there's pressure, but here there's just very little anything. So I think it would just be foolish to put plastic on them, because there's not that much pressure that goes on it. So that's what we're up to. That's what we're up to. So I'm going to go ahead and set this camera up here, and me and Tomato Paste are going to put tomato paste. We're going to put that in. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. So it is back in there. Things you ought to know about these balers. This is very similar to the original baler that I owned back in 1998. I bought my first big square baler. So I do know a fair amount about big square balers. And because this is really a 5 years newer than, well, I think my baler was in 1996. The first one, I bought it in 1998. I was only a couple of years old. It might have been in 94, I don't know. It was an early one. But back in the day, that was like brand new to me. Very similar to this. The only difference between this and the New Holland was that this has a pre-charge chamber instead of a stuffer chamber. And a pre-charge chamber, and it was adjustable. You could change the size of this, and I always just kept it all the way open. But there's slots here. You see these slots here and here on these bands, and what you want to do to open this up as wide as you can for the highest capacity. Now, if I was interested in making super tight bales and this is a known fact, you put smaller slices, less material in the pre-charge chamber, that trips more frequently, but you got to go slower. It will produce tighter bales. Or you can just go slower and fill this thing more thoroughly, and it'll make the same density bale, but we're not interested in going slow. So what you really want to do is to increase the capacity of this baler as fast as you can make it take hay in, which means you have to be able to fill this pre-charge chamber to the top. And those slots, what you do is you loosen those bolts up and you pull these all the way to the front of the baler, which opens this up as wide as it can go. And you can put more hay in there between strokes, because this baler only strokes at like 30 strokes a minute. It's pretty slow. whereas the Krone baler, I believe, strokes at 45 or 46 strokes a minute. It might even be 49, I can't remember. So this is the way it's going to look. Obviously, let's see if I can, okay, so that's the floor plate, everything is where it needs to be. I'm pretty happy with the way that's working. Yes, we straightened that out. At some point it was damaged, so I had Timothy and Grant get a hold of it. We pulled it out of there. It was just real simple. There's a pin that holds it in place here on this side. I don't know why they didn't put a bolt in. It's kind of silly to me, but this is adjustable. So what I did was I put it in the very top hole, raising up the throat to this thing, because there's 1, 2, 3 spots there. So I raised that up as high as I could get it, which will pass more material through, and it'll fill easier. So in the same thing here, you can see that there's a slot there. These go all the way to the top. So these actually come up farther than the front bands, so that there's like a lip. There's a 1/4 inch gap here between the bottom of this and the bottom of this one. So as that hay is forced in, it actually relaxes a little bit. Takes some of that pressure off as it crosses over top of the floor, and then it'll fill that all the way to the top before tripping that plate there and causing it to go in. And I'll demonstrate that a little later. We're going to hook a tractor up to it in a little while, and we're actually going to trip it a few times and make sure that everything is functioning correctly. I'm going to cut the strings out of it, and I'm going to soak down, don't mind the shiny head, I'm going to soak down the knotters with WD-40. No, I am not sponsored by WD-40. I could use fluid film, but it's greasy. The reason I'm using WD-40 is because it will evaporate over time, not leaving a slippery residue like grease or fluid film to get on the strings and cause knot slippage when I actually go to the field. I thought I explained that a little bit earlier with my grease deal. Next thing I'm really going to do is I have the 3 new hoses. I only have 1 to go in. I'm going to put it in the center, and hopefully on Monday or Tuesday I will get my new hoses for the other 2, and I will have this automatic grease gun working and functioning properly. So that's just what's going to happen now. So Grant is having a little bit of issue underneath. He twisted off a bolt on the top, one of these bolts here. You can see it down there, and it's actually an 8mm. What a pain in my ass. Metric, you know, I hate metric. And I was surprised that something that was made in Hesston, Kansas, with American steel and everything, would actually have a metric bolt in there. But that's what it is, a metric bolt. So I drilled it out, 8mm. You got it? It's an 8mm by like 2 or something. 2mm thread?
Yeah, 1.25. 8 mil by 1.25.
Yeah, okay, 1.2 threads per millimeter. So anyway, 2.5 threads per millimeter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get underneath it, and I'm going to drill it out, and I'm going to rethread it. But, you know, I'm going to rethread it, and then there's 2 of them under there. So I might just do them both. I might just do them both while I'm under there, because I like my bolts to be functioning. I really do. I like them to function the way they're supposed to. Because if I got to tear those bands off of there, I want those bands off quick. I want to be able to put them back together. I don't want to be messing with a nut and a bolt. It's a pain in the ass, because the nut and the bolt are not going to be metric. They're going to be standard. And all the other stuff is going to be metric. And if I drop it, then I'm kind of fucked, and it's just going to be a pain in the ass. But these are all the bolts out of the New Holland BB9080 and the BB340 crop cutter. Oh, the 340, not the crop cutter, the regular BB340. Because I think the crop cutter I put poly bands on too. I did. I had poly bands on all of those machines. So, well, I can't get poly bands on this pickup, but it's not necessary because it is a bigger pickup, and honestly, the drag that is on there is very limited. So, anyways, with that being said, these are the New Holland 8.8 bolts. And I'm going to use them. I'm going to put them right in that box. This is a 2003 model year, by the way. So my battery's running dead, so I'm going to shut up and get on with it.